The woman in white who lurks on the deserted roads. On lonely highways and forgotten rural paths, travelers have long whispered of a chilling figure, a woman dressed entirely in white, who appears under the pale moonlight. Her presence is fleeting, yet unforgettable. To encounter her is to carry the weight of a haunting memory that clings to the soul. Legends surrounding the woman in white vary across cultures, but one thing remains consistent. She is never a mere illusion. She is a message, a warning, and sometimes a curse. Stories of the woman in white are as old as human fear itself. In Mexico, she is known as La Llorona, the weeping mother. In Japan, she manifests as Onryo, a vengeful female spirit draped in white. In rural parts of Europe, she is described as a silent mourner, forever wandering the roads she once walked in life. Yet in all these versions, one element binds them together. She is a soul trapped between worlds, condemned to appear in places where human life feels fragile, on deserted roads where darkness devours every corner. Deserted roads are natural breeding grounds for ghost stories. The further one drives from the city, the louder the silence becomes. The sound of the engine hums, headlights stretch thin beams across the emptiness, and the mind begins to play tricks. Shadows seem alive. Shapes emerge from the corners of perception, and time itself bends. These places already carry the energy of isolation, fear, and anticipation. That is why the legend of the woman in white is not just an old tale, but a manifestation of humanity's deepest fear of being alone and vulnerable in the dark. But who is she? Some say she is the spirit of a young bride who died tragically on her wedding night. Others claim she was abandoned on the roadside by a lover who never returned. There are darker tales that describe her as a murdered woman, her body hidden in shallow earth near the highway, her soul forced to wander endlessly until justice is served. In each variation, she is tied to pain, betrayal, and unfinished business. Her white dress, once a symbol of purity, love, or celebration, becomes instead a shroud, a reminder of tragedy. Drivers who encounter her often describe a chilling sequence. At first, they see a faint silhouette ahead on the road, sometimes mistaken for a lost traveler or a victim in need of help. As the car approaches, details emerge. A woman in a long, flowing dress, her face pale and unreadable. Sometimes she raises her arm as if asking for a ride. Other times, she stands motionless, watching. A few claim she suddenly appears in the middle of the road, forcing the driver to slam on the brakes, only for her to vanish without a trace. The most terrifying accounts, however, describe something more invasive. Some drivers insist they have given her a ride, only to realize midway through their journey that the passenger seat is empty. Others report looking in the rearview mirror to find her sitting in the back seat, her hollow eyes fixed on them before dissolving into air. These encounters leave behind more than fear. They leave an imprint, a sense that the line between life and death has been crossed. The phenomenon of the woman in white is not merely a ghost story, but a pattern. Across the globe, countless testimonies echo the same details, repeated across cultures that never shared these legends with one another. It begs the question, is this archetype a universal human fear made manifest? Or could there be something real, something that transcends cultural borders? Perhaps the woman in white is not one spirit, but many. Women who died violently, bound together by the same tragic fate, their energies forming a collective shadow on the world, and the roads themselves play a role. Asphalt and gravel are indifferent, but they witness everything. How many tragedies have unfolded in the silence of deserted highways? How many accidents, murders, and disappearances? Perhaps the woman in white is born not only from personal pain, but also from the land itself, absorbing the grief of countless souls who never made it home. This is where the legend turns darker, because those who see her are often not the same afterward. Witnesses report recurring nightmares, phantom knocks on their doors at night, or the feeling of being watched when they are alone. Some even claim that misfortune follows them, a sudden illness, accidents, or unexplained tragedies striking loved ones. It is as though her presence infects their reality, marking them forever. But is she warning travelers, or luring them to their doom? The deeper we go into her legend, the more complex she becomes. To many cultures, the woman in white is not merely a ghostly apparition, but a spiritual echo of profound grief and injustice. In folklore studies, she is classified as a type entity, a recurring figure whose existence cannot be dismissed as coincidence. But the experiences of those who meet her suggest she is much more than a symbolic myth. She is something living in her own way. The deeper we go into her legend, the more complex she becomes. To many cultures, the woman in white is not merely a ghostly apparition, but a spiritual echo of profound grief and injustice. In folklore studies, she is classified as a type entity, a recurring figure that appears in multiple cultures, carrying nearly identical traits, despite having no shared origin. This makes her far more intriguing, because while most myths are tied to a specific people or region, the woman in white transcends borders. She is everywhere, and she is eternal. But what explains her? Some scholars suggest that she is the embodiment of liminal fear, that fragile state between safety and danger, between civilization and wilderness. Roads, especially abandoned ones, embody liminality. They are pathways that connect us, yet they are also lonely, exposed, and vulnerable. In the middle of a deserted road, a traveler exists between two worlds, where they left and where they are going. And it is precisely in these in-between spaces where the woman in white thrives. Let us consider a real case. In the 1970s, near an isolated stretch of road in Texas, multiple drivers reported seeing the same figure, a pale woman dressed in white, standing by a tree at the side of the road. Some swore she was weeping. Others claimed she attempted to step into their path. Police eventually dismissed the reports as hysteria, but the locals insisted the apparition was tied to a woman who had been murdered in the area decades earlier. They said her body was never found, and so her spirit still lingered, waiting for discovery, waiting for someone to listen. Another chilling account comes from Brazil, where the woman in white is known as a Dama de Branco. She is said to haunt highways at night, often appearing to truck drivers traveling long distances. Testimonies describe her as young, beautiful, and silent, yet her presence brings an overwhelming sense of dread. Some claim she climbs onto vehicles, while others believe she is responsible for accidents, distracting drivers until they lose control. In these tales, she is not a passive spirit, but an active force of misfortune. And then there are cases where the woman in white behaves almost like a warning. In rural Ireland, a woman traveling alone by carriage in the 19th century reported seeing a glowing figure on the road. Frightened, she stopped and turned back, only to discover that further ahead, a bridge had collapsed during the night. Had she continued her journey, she would have plunged to her death. This version paints the woman in white not as a demon, but as a reluctant guardian, forever cursed to linger, yet still compelled to intervene. What makes her so haunting is her ambiguity. She is not always purely evil, nor entirely benevolent. Instead, she inhabits the gray area of morality, where motives are unclear and consequences unpredictable. To encounter her is to face the unknown, stripped of the comfort of certainty, and humans fear nothing more than uncertainty. But beyond folklore, psychological explanations also emerge. Many scientists argue that sightings of the woman in white are hallucinations caused by fatigue, stress, or sensory deprivation on long drives. After all, drivers traveling lonely highways at night are susceptible to road hypnosis, a trance-like state where the mind blurs reality and imagination. Add exhaustion, fear of isolation, and cultural stories already embedded in memory, and the brain may conjure a figure that seems real. Yet this explanation does not account for one critical fact: multiple witnesses, often strangers to one another, reporting the same experience on the same stretch of road. Coincidence, perhaps, but to those who have seen her, the word coincidence feels insufficient. The woman in white may also represent collective guilt. Across history, women have often suffered violence, betrayal, and abandonment. Their stories, silenced in life, return in death as legends of wandering spirits. Every culture that tells her story may unconsciously be acknowledging centuries of injustice. She is not merely a ghost of one woman, but the echo of many, bound together in eternal mourning. That is why she appears not just in one land, but in every corner of the world, because her story is tragically universal. For those who claim to have truly seen her, there is another detail too chilling to ignore: her eyes. Witnesses often describe them as lifeless, black voids, or in some cases, as burning with a faint, unnatural light. To look into her gaze is to feel stripped bare, as though she sees not only the present, but also the sins, regrets, and secrets you try to hide. Some say that locking eyes with her is a curse, binding you to her world, ensuring that you will dream of her until your final breath. Yet despite all these warnings, curiosity persists. Many thrill seekers deliberately seek out haunted roads, hoping for a glimpse of her. They drive at midnight, cameras ready, hearts racing. But what they fail to realize is that the woman in white is not a circus attraction. She is not a ghost who reveals herself on demand. She chooses when to appear and to whom. Some may spend years searching and never find her, while others encounter her when they least expect it, when the silence of the road feels most unbearable. And when she does appear, it is never just a sighting. It is an invitation into the abyss of human fear. As the legend spreads, so too do the chilling testimonies. What is remarkable about these encounters is not just their consistency, but their emotional impact. Many who claim to have seen the woman in white are left deeply disturbed, unable to explain the intensity of fear that gripped them. It is not simply the shock of seeing a ghostly figure. It is the feeling that she carries with her the weight of despair itself, pressing down on those who cross her path. One haunting testimony comes from a long-distance driver in Argentina. Traveling a remote stretch of road in the Pampas, he noticed a woman on the side of the road late at night. She was barefoot, her white dress fluttering in the wind, though the air was still. Thinking she was a stranded traveler, he stopped and offered her a ride. She climbed into the passenger seat without saying a word. For several minutes, silence filled the cabin. Then, as he attempted to ask where she was headed, he realized she had vanished completely. The door had not opened. The seatbelt remained buckled. Terrified, he pulled over and swore never to drive that road again. Another terrifying case was documented in the Philippines, where the woman in white is often linked to tales of Capre and other spirits of the night. A group of students traveling home after a late-night celebration reported that their bus hit what appeared to be a woman in the middle of the road. Horrified, the driver stopped, but when they rushed out, there was no body, no trace of impact, not even a sound. Yet when they returned to the bus, every passenger swore they saw the same pale figure now sitting in the back row, staring at them in silence. Panic erupted, and some even fainted. The bus was abandoned that night, left in the middle of the highway until morning. Such stories leave one to wonder, is the woman in white merely a restless ghost, or is she a being that feeds on human fear? In paranormal studies, there is a theory known as energy manifestation, the idea that spirits are drawn to human emotions, especially fear, anger, and sorrow. If true, then deserted roads, where exhaustion and isolation magnify fear, are perfect hunting grounds. The woman in white may not simply be a tragic soul wandering aimlessly. She may actively seek out the living to draw upon their terror, to keep herself tethered to this world. Even skeptics, who dismiss her as a product of hallucination or folklore, cannot easily explain the phenomenon of mass sightings. In Colombia, for example, a series of accidents occurred on a single stretch of highway over several months. Survivors reported the same cause. A woman in white appeared suddenly in front of their vehicles, forcing them to swerve or brake. Authorities blamed poor lighting and driver fatigue, but locals insisted it was the La Novia Fantasma, the Phantom Bride. To this day, people avoid that road after sunset, believing her presence lingers there, waiting for new victims. And it is not just roads she haunts. In some versions, the woman in white is seen near rivers, forests, and abandoned houses. But the road remains her most iconic stage. Perhaps because roads symbolize transition between safety and danger, between home and exile, between life and death. Every driver knows that a journey on a dark, isolated road can turn tragic in a single second. That fear alone is enough to breathe life into the legend, making it feel more real with every retelling. But why white? Why is the woman always dressed in this particular color? White, across cultures, symbolizes purity, innocence, and peace. Yet it is also the color of mourning in many traditions, such as in parts of Asia. A white dress on a spectral figure is unsettling precisely because it represents contradiction. She is both bride and mourner, innocent and vengeful, alive and dead. The dress amplifies her unnatural presence, making her instantly recognizable in the darkness. Some witnesses describe her clothing in greater detail, sometimes torn and stained, sometimes immaculate, as though she were still preparing for a wedding or celebration that never came. In either case, the dress becomes a prison, a reminder of the moment she lost her life. Unlike the living, who can change attire with time, the woman in white is forever trapped in the garment of her last memory, repeating her sorrow endlessly. The effect she has on those who encounter her goes beyond fear. Many report feeling physically drained after a sighting, as though a part of their life force has been siphoned away. Nightmares often follow, recurring visions of the same figure, standing silently at the foot of the bed, or beckoning from a darkened hallway. This phenomenon has led some researchers to classify her as a parasitic entity, feeding not on flesh, but on energy, sustained by the dread she instills. And yet, despite the horror, she also inspires sympathy. Some believe that she appears not to harm, but to remind, that every time her figure materializes on a road, she is retelling her story of betrayal, abandonment, or violent death, pleading for recognition. Perhaps the real tragedy of the woman in white is not her haunting presence, but the silence she endured in life, only broken now by whispers in the dark. The deeper we examine her legend, the clearer it becomes that the woman in white is not a tale to be dismissed. She is a mirror reflecting both human cruelty and human fear. But in the shadow of this realization lies an even darker question. If she is real, if she exists beyond folklore, what does she truly want from us? To understand what the woman in white truly wants, we must look at the patterns of her appearances. Unlike ordinary ghosts, she does not haunt homes, battlefields, or graveyards. She chooses roads, highways, paths that connect one life to another. This choice is no accident. Roads are places of transition, liminal spaces where the living are constantly moving, never rooted, always vulnerable. It is in this state of movement, half focused on the journey, half surrendered to the unknown, that she strikes. Many paranormal researchers suggest that the woman in white is a psychopomp, a being whose role is to guide souls to the afterlife. In mythology, such figures are often neutral, neither good nor evil. But the woman in white is different. She does not merely guide the dead, she confronts the living. Some claim she appears to those who are close to death, as if warning them of their fate. Others believe she seeks to drag the living into her world, unable to accept her isolation. One famous case comes from Spain, along a rural road outside of Madrid. A young couple returning from a party encountered a woman dressed in white, drenched from head to toe as though she had walked through a storm. Concerned, they offered her a ride. She sat in the back seat quietly. When they reached a curve, she leaned forward and whispered, "Slow down, this is where I died." The driver, startled, obeyed. Moments later, he discovered that the curve was sharper than expected, and without slowing, they would have crashed. When he turned to thank her, she was gone. Only the damp imprint of her presence remained on the seat. This case is one of many where the woman in white plays the role of a warning. But if that is true, why do so many others report accidents, terror, and curses after meeting her? Perhaps, like humanity itself, she is contradictory, sometimes savior, sometimes executioner. It may depend not on her, but on the person who sees her. Could she be a reflection of one's own fate? A mirror that shows what lies hidden within the heart of the traveler. Folklore often portrays her as connected to betrayal. In countless variations, she was deceived by a lover, abandoned at an altar, or murdered by someone she trusted. Her sorrow turns to rage, and her rage anchors her spirit to the earthly realm. This is why many legends describe her as targeting men in particular, luring them, frightening them, or leading them to their deaths. Yet, curiously, women also report seeing her, and often describe a sensation of overwhelming sadness rather than terror. It is as if they recognize her pain, while men fear her vengeance. Science has attempted to explain these legends with psychological theories. One such theory is the archetypal projection, proposed by Carl Jung. According to Jung, the human mind contains universal archetypes that appear in myths, dreams, and hallucinations. The woman in white, in this interpretation, is the embodiment of the betrayed feminine, a recurring figure that expresses both innocence and vengeance. This would explain why she appears in nearly every culture, even where no direct connection exists. She is an idea made flesh, a nightmare born from collective human memory. But what if there is more than psychology at work? Roads are ancient places of energy. Long before highways, people walked paths that cut across forests, deserts, and mountains. Countless lives were lost on those trails, through accidents, fiancé, or despair. It is possible that the woman in white is not one spirit, but a fusion of many, a collective echo of all the women who perished unjustly on roads throughout history. When travelers see her, they may not be seeing a single ghost, but the embodiment of countless souls merged into one timeless figure. Encounters with her are often followed by strange phenomena. Electronics malfunction, radios cut out, headlights flicker. Some witnesses report a sudden drop in temperature inside their vehicles, even on warm nights. Dogs howl when she is near, refusing to move forward. And always there is silence. When the woman in white appears, the night itself seems to pause, as though the world is holding its breath. Her presence has even been connected to death omens. In Chile, for example, the woman in white is said to appear to drivers who are destined to die within the year. In Romania, she is linked to accidents, where seeing her is considered a sign that tragedy is inevitable. And in the United States, particularly along haunted highways, she is rumored to vanish only after the driver has nearly crashed, almost as though she delights in testing how close one can come to death. Despite these terrifying accounts, fascination with her continues to grow. Entire online forums are dedicated to sharing sightings, photographs, and videos of alleged encounters. Paranormal investigators organize midnight drives along roads rumored to be haunted by her. Yet in nearly every case, the same eerie conclusion is reached. No matter how much technology is brought to capture her, she appears only to those she chooses. Cameras glitch, batteries die, and recordings reveal nothing but static. The woman in white cannot be captured, only experienced. And perhaps that is her ultimate power. She thrives on the retelling of her story. Each frightened driver who swears they saw her adds fuel to the legend, ensuring that she will never be forgotten. In this way, she is immortal, not only as a ghost, but as a tale, spreading from mouth to ear, generation to generation. But if she is a story, what is the moral? Is she a cautionary figure reminding us to respect the road, to value life, and to beware of betrayal? Or is she a predator, feeding on our fear, drawing us closer to the edge with every sighting? The answer lies not in folklore or science, but in the chilling silence of the deserted roads she calls home. The mystery of the woman in white is not confined to ancient folklore or distant legends. Even today, in our modern world of GPS, security cameras, and constant digital surveillance, her presence continues to defy explanation. Reports surface every year, from truck drivers, late-night travelers, and locals who refuse to walk certain roads after dark. Despite all our technological progress, the woman in white remains untouchable, as if she belongs to a realm just beyond human reach. Consider a chilling report from 2015 in Mexico. A taxi driver in Guadalajara claimed to have picked up a young woman late at night. She was dressed in white, her voice soft, almost broken, as she asked to be taken to a nearby address. The driver agreed, but when they arrived, she disappeared from the back seat. Shocked, he went to the door of the house she had mentioned. An older woman answered and, upon hearing his story, wept. Her daughter had died tragically in a car accident years before, dressed in the same white gown described by the driver. Stories like these raise disturbing questions. Does the woman in white actively seek out contact with the living? Or are these encounters accidental, fragments of her trapped existence bleeding into our world? Some suggest that she does not even know she is dead, that she is reliving the same night endlessly, still searching for someone to help her reach home. In this sense, she is less of a monster and more of a prisoner, forever trapped in a cycle of longing and despair. Yet others believe her appearances are deliberate. Witnesses often describe the sensation of being chosen, that she looked directly at them, as if selecting her next target. Survivors of encounters frequently confess to feeling marked afterward, plagued by misfortune or recurring nightmares. It is as though the woman in white does not simply vanish. She lingers, attaching herself to the psyche of her victims. This idea leads to a darker interpretation. Perhaps the woman in white is not a single ghost at all, but something far older, a universal entity that wears the mask of sorrow to gain our trust. What better disguise than that of a grieving, vulnerable woman, luring compassionate travelers into stopping their vehicles? Once they invite her in, she reveals her true nature, feeding on their fear, their energy, and their sanity. If this is true, then the woman in white may not be the spirit of a victim, but the predator of the roads. There is an unnerving consistency in the way these encounters escalate. At first, she is seen from afar, a distant figure blending with the mist or shadows. Then she draws closer, forcing the driver to make a choice: stop or continue. If they stop, the encounter deepens. She enters the vehicle, she speaks, she leaves traces of her presence. If they continue, she may vanish, or she may appear again, ahead on the road, as though distance means nothing to her. Some reports describe her appearing multiple times in succession, each time closer, each time more menacing. It is almost as though she is testing the will of her victim, pushing them toward the breaking point. In one chilling modern case, a group of friends in the United States decided to investigate a stretch of road rumored to be haunted by the woman in white. They drove slowly, recording with their phones, laughing nervously to mask their fear. For miles, nothing happened. Then suddenly, one of them screamed. The camera captured a figure in white standing directly in the middle of the road. The driver swerved violently, nearly losing control. When they stopped and looked back, there was no one. Later, upon reviewing the footage, they found only static during the crucial moments. The image of the woman was gone, erased, as though she had never been there. Technology fails against her. Cameras malfunction, recordings corrupt, and batteries drain inexplicably. Paranormal investigators argue that this is no coincidence, that her presence disrupts electromagnetic fields, bending reality itself. Skeptics dismiss this, claiming it is simply fear interfering with perception. But for those who have experienced her, no scientific explanation can erase the raw terror of that encounter. What is undeniable is the effect she leaves behind. Survivors describe her as unforgettable, her face etched into their minds even if they could not clearly see it. Some recall her eyes as pools of endless darkness, others as glowing embers filled with rage. Many confess to hearing her voice in their dreams, whispering words they cannot understand. And in rare but terrifying cases, witnesses claim she has followed them home, appearing at windows, standing in the corners of their rooms, or brushing past them in hallways late at night. It is in these stories that the woman in white transcends her role as a mere roadside phantom. She becomes something larger, an entity capable of stepping beyond the borders of her haunted roads, reaching into the private lives of those who dared cross her path. At this point, she is no longer a story to be shared, but a shadow that clings to reality itself. The question is no longer whether the woman in white exists. The real question is, what does she want with us? The roads at night are more than stretches of asphalt. They are places where human vulnerability meets the unknown, where silence becomes deafening, and where shadows take on lives of their own. In this fragile space, the woman in white reigns, not as a myth of the past, but as a constant reminder that some fears cannot be outrun, no matter how far we drive. Her legend forces us to confront the darkest corners of our psyche. She embodies grief, betrayal, and unfinished stories, things that every culture, every generation, and every individual carries within themselves. Perhaps this is why she appears everywhere, in every corner of the world. We all know what it means to lose, to mourn, to regret. And the woman in white is the eternal echo of that sorrow, appearing in the dead of night to remind us that the past never truly disappears. But there is another way to see her. Maybe she is not simply a harbinger of death or a predator of fear. Maybe she is also a messenger. Her appearance on deserted roads could be a warning to slow down, to remain alert, to remember that life is fragile and can be stolen in a second. How many accidents have been prevented because a driver, terrified by her vision, became more cautious? How many tragedies might she have averted even if through fear? In this interpretation, she becomes not just a symbol of death, but also of survival. And yet, her dual nature remains. For every story of salvation, there are others drenched in horror, of drivers who crashed after seeing her, of families cursed by her presence, of restless souls who claim to hear her voice long after the encounter. She is both curse and warning, mirror and predator. That is why her legend will never die, because she is not one thing but many, reflecting both the cruelty of the world and the resilience of the human spirit. Her presence on deserted roads reminds us of the thin veil that separates the living from the dead, the known from the unknown. To encounter her is to realize how fragile our reality is, how quickly the ordinary can dissolve into terror, and that is why, no matter how many skeptics dismiss her, those who have seen her will never forget. For them, the woman in white is not a story, it is a memory carved into their soul. The moral of her tale is as haunting as her image. Never ignore the shadows of the past. They do not disappear simply because we choose to look away. The woman in white is a reminder that pain demands to be acknowledged, that grief echoes across time, and that silence can be as deadly as violence. Her story warns us not only about deserted roads, but about the dangers of neglecting the wounds of humanity itself. And for us, the living, her legend carries one more lesson. Respect the road, respect the night, and respect the unknown. Because in the stillness of the dark, when you are most certain that you are alone, you may not be. The woman in white could be waiting, standing just beyond the reach of your headlights, watching, deciding whether your story will join hers. So the next time you find yourself driving down a lonely, deserted road, and the silence grows heavier, ask yourself, are you truly alone? Or is she there, lingering at the edge of the night, waiting for you to see her? Because once you do, there is no turning back. Thank you for watching this video. We ask that you subscribe to our channel and like this video. Also activate the notification bell to be alerted about our posts. See you in the next video.